Going to be not only giving that feedback, but how do you actually link that to compensation systems and talent management, et cetera. That's going to be the tough part. So my belief is going to be we need to change things, and the reason is because of the way the educational system has been, the way technology is incorporated, and now it's up to us to do it. So we'll get into more. I'll stop right there, but I'm not sure if people agree with me, but that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ani. From my perspective, to start with, I would like to talk about what this means to people at different stages of their careers and at an organization level. So when you're an individual contributor, how do you say X performance system is good or bad? If you're getting rating 4s and 5s, 4 and 5 being the highest, wow, everything is good. HR is doing a good job and systems are good. The moment you get a below average rating, that's when the question to the performance appraisal system starts. Oh, the feedback was not captured properly, and so on and so forth. When you move to become a manager, that's where it becomes even tougher, and especially if there are organizations where you have a so-called bell curve, because you're forced to differentiate amongst the people, and that is a tough job, right? You move to a MMM level, managers managing managers, or so-called a business head level, then the perspective changes. Because you suddenly realize, why are we doing it as an organization? We are doing it as an organization because X budget was given to you. You need to know that who are your top performers in the company and where to invest, right? And also you would want to churn. So you also need to know who are the bottom performers, because you have to continuously, if you want to build a high performance organization, you need to have that churn. At an organization level, first, why this becomes important? Because every organization wants to know who are your top 5 to 10%, right? Because X amount of budget at any organization level, where do you invest? Also about the profits, right? There was an example which was given by Shrikant, I guess, that, okay, if the margin is so much, how can 80% of your people be top performers, right? So those were the basics. So that's how it's treated or thought at various levels. My perspective to this is that it's a journey which is happening. If I look, say, 5-6 years back, most of the companies were talking about enforcing bell curve, and it was also happening in some of the companies. Right now, when we look at it, I don't think so. There are many companies which we are enforcing bell curve. We have moved to a stage of normalization or calibration process, right? Most of the companies are working towards that. And also the future is, like Annie also said, because the economy is changing, the environment is changing, we have a younger generation, the way the feedback needs to be given is changing. Yes, the performance evaluation system will also go through a change. Now bringing to the context about what we are doing at SAP, because the kind of performance appraisal system is very dependent on the maturity of the organization. For example, Shrikant also said, if it's a new organization, first of all, you're talking about getting the right skill set. That time, maybe the kind of performance appraisal you're talking about is, we don't have a discussion on the bell curve at that point of time, honestly. In SAP, we have moved, we have changed with times. Though we have not done away with normalization, we never had a bell curve, right? Because we were never force-fitting people, but because we have moved towards, as part of performance management, towards a calibration process where people are calibrated at a business head level. However, the change which we have gone through is bringing the potential into picture. At an organization level, you would still want to know who are your top performers. But when it comes to investment, you just don't want your top performers for doing X job. You want to know who are the people who can be promoted or made to grow to the next level, because that's where the real investment comes into picture. So that's the journey which we are at. And yes, there are discussions of doing away with the bell curve, but those are discussions, and depending on the maturity level, we might do that in future.
Hey, DB, before getting to that, Vibha, you mentioned a very interesting point, differentiation, how the journey has been. I remember early days of my HR career, I read an article called Differentiate or Die. One of you read that article? The title was Differentiate or Die. That means if you don't differentiate, you are going to die. Today, I did in some of the companies differentiated, and the learning I had is differentiate and die. That means if you differentiate, you are going to die. So that's a big change. It has transformed. I thought I'll share. Thanks, DP.
So since you have started on a lighter note, so I can continue on that one.
Yeah.
So Siri was talking and explaining the performance management system in various ways, and the way I look at it, it's like a low-grade fever, right? It's like a low-grade fever in the sense you can't take off, you still have to go to the office, you have to live with it, but frankly, you know something is wrong, right? So that's what it is. So you sort of live with it. You know, coming back to this whole piece of performance management system, and I'm going to, while Vibha has said, Annie has said, and you know, right in the beginning, in the kickoff, it said that, you know, the world is changing very fast, there's agility, there is changes, you can't wait for 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, so we need to have the performance management system needs to be changed. But if I look at history, the performance management system at various phases has been changing, right? So right from 1950s, people have been trying to change it in some form or another, right? 1950s or so, you know, it was about having a performance management system. Then, you know, in the 50s, it was the MBO, which came into being 50s to 60s, 60 to 70, they call it as from management objectives to management by results, it started calling. And then also, basically you want a performance management system. One way is to, yes, you have a budget and you need to identify which individual is performing well or not, or where I need to invest in development. But it's also because in the final outcome, you want the organization to perform, right? So they started looking at it, if MBO is not giving the result, MBR is not giving the result, and then you started with this whole movement of the TQM in 70s and 80s, the total quality management piece that started. Peter Senge talked about the learning organization. So people were always struggling to see how do we raise the performance of the organization, right? And for the last 2 decades, the whole discussion has been around people first, teaming, empowerment, energizing, all those buzzwords have come into play, right? And all those buzzwords are got to do with people, right? Having people first. But then when you look at that, the most foundational piece of people management system, which is the performance management system, only went through cosmetic changes in the last 20 years, right? And therefore, with all the development that has happened around us, the time is absolutely right for it to change. And the Deloitte study of 2014 says that nearly 70% of the organization that they surveyed, and they surveyed about 3,300 leaders and HR people put together, they said nearly 70% of those are planning to make a change, which means it's not a buzzword, people are really wanting to do it. And if you actually look at in 2010 is when the real changes started. Maybe in your organization a little later, but with some other organizations, 5 companies changed in 2010. Since then, till date, right, you know, there are about, about 40% of the Fortune 500 companies are working to change their performance management system. The marquee names of the companies which have really changed their performance management systems are Deloitte, Kelly, Dell, Gap, FedEx, Adobe, Zappos, Microsoft, Cargill, Sony, Dolby, Lears. All of them are changing, right? And they have changed. They have already changed. And now let me talk about, as she said, her organization was looking at it. Let me talk about the IBM story of it. So our current performance management system is, we call it a team-based decision making. A manager does his performance piece, he brings it into the forum, all the managers are sitting there, a senior guy is there, HR is enabling, everybody's presenting why they think this person has to be in whatever the rating is. We do have a guidance for a bell curve, but each business decides its own bell curve that they want to run. We don't force that. You know, we ask the business leader, you need to decide that. And every year for the last so many years, about 1 to 1.5% of the people escalate that they're not satisfied with the performance management system. So we think it's doing well, perhaps no, because I'll give you some other data. So 1 to 1.5% people escalate, going right up to the CHQ saying, no, this is not good, my rating was not fair, it wasn't there. So last year, we decided no escalations, HR will not receive any escalations or intervene for the performance management system. It is between the manager and the business, the manager, and the employee. We have nothing to do with it because it's a tool which the management needs to drive the performance for the business. And except if somebody feels that there has been, let's call it the person has been differentiated with an unfair mean, it's a caste or a race or, something where the person has been really discriminated against. And, we in India are extremely creative, right? So that 1% has not got converted into discrimination. My race, my caste, my gender, I come from a different team, my village, the 1% still remains, right? In any case, as we talk, we are going through our change in performance management system. We decided to do it somewhat very differently. We are co-creating the performance management system. So when you say co-creating, you can say, how can a company which is 400,000 people co-creating a performance management system which would hold true for us? So we have a internal social platform. We went there, and for 3 weeks, we had few questions which were put to the entire IBM population worldwide as to what they think, how should we measure performance, right? Should the performance be measured based on an individual? Should the performance be measured on team-based decision making? How do we differentiate performance if we have to differentiate? And all those questions were raised. And the last count was nearly about 75,000 people got in to express about their views and to give feedback to HR, to the management. And by the way, this is business along with our head of HR globally who has initiated this exercise. So we are in that journey. We are now looking at the ideas, putting them into themes. From themes, we'll arrive at where we need to go. What is it that people think really works? Because no one is, as you said, it is contextual to every organization. So you can't really lift and shift into your organization. You need to create it what holds true for you, right? So I think these were 2 or 3 things that I wanted to say. But one more thing which you talked about, the bell curve, and I spoke about the bell curve. I met our the big author and speaker, Ken Blanchard, somewhere. He was talking about performance management system. This is about, maybe 2-3 years ago. And he said, when you go out into the market to recruit, you recruit the best, right? You don't compromise. You don't recruit as per a bell curve. I'm going to recruit the best here. I'm going to recruit the less best here. And I'm going to recruit the mass here. He says, you don't go do that. You bring in what is the best. And the moment you bring in the best, right? In year 1, year 2, year 3, you say, this guy is here, this guy is here. So he says, who took those decisions? And he was of the view that it is the role of a manager to make sure that every individual goes to rating A so that you optimally utilize the talent and the skills which are within you. And if you are not going to do that, right, let the person assess himself and say, vis-a-vis what he wants to do, how much value is he adding to the whole piece. So he really dropped it aside the normal distribution curve. And he was actually evangelizing for last few years when he shared that he's been going to various forums and talking to do away with this whole rating system and make sure, actually, if at all it is, let the managers be rated to see how many of them pull their people up into being the A and the topmost performers. So with this, let me stop and,
DP, one very interesting point you mentioned about bell curve. So my experience has been, we are trying to use one tool for many purposes. We are using performance management to give feedback, performance management to decide compensation, performance management to decide learning needs, performance management to identify who is your successor and everything. So when you use one tool for multi-purpose, you get conflict. So one of the article I was reading is, there are 2 things in a performance management. One is appraisal and another one is evaluation. When you say evaluation, you are evaluating against the goals at the end of the year or every day. Appraisal is you are relatively comparing between a bunch of people who is number 1 and who is number 10, if 10 people are there. So, and why we use it, like Vibha, you mentioned, for distributing compensation or merit increase or whatever it may be. So one of the thought is, why we are trying to use one tool for many purposes? Why can't we use different tools for deciding critical steps in the employee life cycle. So that's one of the biggest learning I had. Let us not misuse the tool and misinterpret the tools. Thanks, DP, for the wonderful perspective. Over to you.
Thank you. So, I think there's been so much of noise around performance management rating. I want to spend a few minutes really differentiating between what I think are the principles and what are tools you can use to achieve the principles. So to my mind, when you're talking about performance management, I'm exceedingly conscious, as you said, that people can make performance management linked to learning, coaching and mentoring, total rewards, anything you name in HR. For the sake of being a little more specific in this discussion, I'm not denying that you could do that, but let me be a little more specific. So at the minimum, I think from a principle perspective, what do you expect a performance management system to do? Yeah? I'm not talking about tool, I'm talking about performance management process, in that sense. First, I think it identifies the goals for the organization, the department, and the individual. Why goals? If somebody were to ask, I'd say, typically boards of organization, set goals. Yeah, they have very clear targets that they want the management team to accomplish. You don't walk into a board meeting and the board says, I know you're all well-intentioned people, go and do your best. Right? Very clear targets that are there. So first thing is the identification of goals. Second, the alignment. Yeah? So clearly we need to ensure that organization goals are cascaded to departments, to individuals, etc., etc. Third, there should be a degree of stretch. Yeah? When people say that, how can I differentiate? Everybody has achieved their goals. Typically, the problem goes back to goal setting itself. Yeah? So there has not been perhaps a great deal of stretch in the process of goal setting. So there should be an element of stretch. Fourth is, regardless of what your feedback cycle is, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be annual, but at the end of it, there is some kind of a discussion around what's really happened, what's not happened, and so on. And fifth, and I want to be unequivocal about it, there has to be differentiation about what has, who has achieved what. So typically, except for very, very exceptional situations, in organizations of a certain scale and size, you would find that there is a differentiation in terms of performance, in terms of contribution to the organizational goal. So that differentiation clearly needs to be there. Now, you can use any number of tools to achieve this. So when we talk about goal setting, you might do individual, you might do team, you might do balanced scorecard. Yeah? If you're talking about differentiation, you may say, I want to do bell curve, you may say, I want to do only talents and non-talents. I will differentiate not on the basis of individual contribution, but I'll do team-based. Yeah? But the concept of differentiation, the principle of differentiation needs to be established. The principle of goal setting needs to be there. So, to my mind, I think the confusion often happens because people are talking about one tool or the other. And it's like, it's a bit like toys in the shop. There are many toys in the shop, more glittering than the other. And we are constantly being marketed to as HR professionals. Do this, it's the latest thing. The important thing is tools are fine. You can use whatever tool is contexted to your organization, what is best for you. If you're in a culture where individual goal setting is perhaps not the norm or individual differentiation is not the norm, you could look at team-based goal setting, team-based differentiation. But the principles have to remain, and that's something which clearly I think it's important for us to differentiate. Coming to our organization, Exide Life, I think I'll perhaps be a contrarian over here, saying that while we don't have a bell curve in the classical format, clearly when we go at the end of the year to the board and say this is what the organization has achieved, there's a very clear expectation that basis the achievement of the organization, there will be a differentiation at the basis of departments and individuals as well. We cannot have a situation where, for example, the organization has not met all its objectives, but everybody at an individual level have. All senior people seem to have done miraculously very well. So there is a clear agreement on that. We also are mindful in deciding how to apply the bell curve. So if there's a small department of 5 people or 6 people, obviously you're not going to go there and say, I want the classical bell curve there. Yeah, so there has to be a discussion facilitated by HR, with strong governance to make sure that, at a certain number, depending on the size of the department, the performance of the department, there is a differentiation, but it's not as if it's a one-size-fits-all. And I think by and large, it has a Vibha's point on when when I'm an underachiever, I clearly have a problem with the performance management system. When I'm rated well, I don't. Yeah, so to some extent, that plays out everywhere. We have a process whereby people can reach out to HR or their manager's manager if there is a huge disconnect. But by and large, it's something which the principle of differentiation does get served with that. So it's a bit of a contrarian one, but that's where we are.
And thanks, Priya. One of the things like differentiate or die, another concept was prevalent in performance management is if you don't differentiate, your good people will leave. If you differentiate, your bad people will leave. And it's a choice whether you want to differentiate or not. So that was the context maybe 5 years, 10 years. Today, everybody is leaving, irrespective of good performer or a bad performer. And if you get away with the differentiation, then you cannot say that you are good attrition or a bad attrition. You cannot calibrate it because there is no differentiation in this. So it's very interesting thought. The differentiation keep on challenging us one way or other way. Thanks.
Yeah, my views are, there's one new perspective I want to bring into the discussion, which is there is an organizational performance management and there is an individual performance management. Many organizations have a fantastic organization performance management, which is the BMS, the cadence, the weekly reviews. It works like clockwork. But it may have also a situation where the individual performance management is broken. So it doesn't always necessarily mean that organizations which are successful have both. You may find that organizations have a very well-oiled machinery when it comes to organizational performance management through the business management systems and the other review process. But it may not have a very strong ethos around the individual performance management. That's one thing I would like to call out. The second thing I would like to call out, which many of my esteemed panelists have said, that the core of individual performance management does not change, which is about engagement, which is about recognition, which is about linking to compensation, which is about differentiation, which is about avoiding discrimination. So these 5 core principles really do not change. What is changing is actually what Sri said in his introductory note, that organization strategies are very, very quickly getting aligned to how you want to design and differentiate performance. Let me give an example. For an industry which has got a much shorter product life cycle, which we heard from Arun in the beginning of the speech, will have a very different performance management system that has more traditional, longer life cycle processes. So clearly the goals and the strategies drive what kind of performance management system you want to build. That's number one. Number two, performance management systems drives organization culture significantly. One of my panelists called about Zappos, which is one of the online retailing companies. Now, Zappos is a benchmark of what customer service, customer orientation is all about. And that is one single focus that Zappos does when it tries to integrate performance management with the culture. Or, for example, we look at Microsoft, which is one of the companies which recently transferred to a very new performance appraisal system. One of the single focused agenda of Satya Nadella has been, how do you bring in collaboration in Microsoft and breaking down organization silos? And how does performance management drive this cultural transformation, which is my second point. The third point, which also is very important, is how the demographics are changing, especially in the emerging market. There are markets in Lenovo where we have more than 50% millennials. And millennials behave, they get excited, rewarded, compensated very differently. So when you have a huge shift of demographics, it is forcing organization to change very differently. The locus standi or the power has shifted to the employees from the employers, which is something which is inevitable. The fourth factor which I call out is the ease of technology deployment. Earlier, it may not have been very easy to deploy tools which will have much frequent feedback process in place. But now, with the help of web, cloud, mobile, you can access, you can connect, you can collaborate very, very quickly. And that's really a very, very important factor that is aiding this whole transformation. And lastly, I think resources are scarce. People want efficiency. People want to manage much more with less. One of the things that was found out from a study where before Deloitte changed into the new performance management system is that for a 65,000 employee population, it spent 2 million hours in doing the traditional appraisal system. So what it wanted to do is to simplify its processes, and through this study, they found that if they kill a number of complicated, complex processes from the traditional appraisal, they would be able to achieve much more within the lesser amount of time they would spend. When Accenture actually moved away to the new system, they also did a very, very similar exercise of calculating how much of time they are spending in the long process of the appraisal. So that's the last driver, I think, is what's driving organization. For Lenovo, I mean, just a quick background. We are 9 years into existence. Our revenues are $50 billion. We have 50,000 people across the world. Started with the PC business, buying IBM's PC business, and then turned it around. Today, we are globally #1 in PC category. We soon diversified into smartphones. We diversified into enterprise solutions and cloud. And many of them has through the mergers and acquisitions. So we are in a crossroad where we are trying to find out what's really works best for us. We see that at one end of the spectrum, when the smartphone business is extremely consumer-centric, extremely volatile, where the product life cycle is just 3 months. If you've seen the flash sales happen, 80% of the products get sold within 1 week, and then it is a long tail of 20% of the sales that happen. And on the other side, you have the enterprise business, which has got a much larger selling cycle. So what is really going to work for us? We are also in a journey where we are trying to identify what is the right space for us. Does one size fits all? We do have a loosely defined bell curve, but as DP said, no manager is bound to actually follow it, but we rate and allow managers to be flexible. But at this point of time, we are introspecting, we are researching. Very recently, we did an engagement survey, and surprisingly, people are happy. Managers are happy with the current process. We did a quick dipstick survey through the Monkey survey and also face-to-face interviews with the directors and above. Again, we see a very polarized view. So the question is, if the company is doing well, if people are not really pressing for a huge change, there needs to be a significant trigger why we need to change. Some statistics would help. The Corporate Executive Board study in 2014 has said 3% of the current organizations have done away with the rating. 3%. 21% of the organizations in the same study say have currently using the forced ranking system in the true sense of the form. So it is a journey. I think where we are right now is for the next couple of quarters, we will be doing both quantitative and qualitative analysis of what's working, what's not working, and then decide our next course of action.
Okay.
I'm just going to build on his Corporate Executive Board, one of the stats. So in fact, I was just reading it. I'm not too good at remembering numbers, so I keep it with me. So this is one of the studies which shows that 2/3 of the top-rated top performers are actually not top performers, right? So this is how the rating takes place. And an SHRM study says that 90% of the performance systems are failure. People have said that. And another study says that 25% of the performance rating actually correlates to performance. This is an SHRM study. So this sort of nails the issue that while over the years, the last 2 decades, has said that we really want to do something for the people, but the people's systems have not changed, there is actually a need to make a change, right? Of course, timing would vary. As you said, the maturity of an organization, of at what stage they are and what is their priorities. But it is very clear that, this one people management system has to undergo some kind of change, because that's the, global statistics which is, emerging. I'm sorry.
Hey, thanks, DP. It's wonderful. Okay, I think we should give a big hand to the panelists. I think we could complete on time. So I'll stand here. It's distracting me a little bit. So DP, it's a wonderful statistics. Going back into, I'll start with the first question, then we have close to 20 minutes to have more interaction. So the first questions to you is performance and potential is equal? That means potential is equal to performance, or you find potential is not equal to performance? Is potential is equal to performance? No. So always it is more or less, performance is less than potential or more than potential? Less than potential. So what's the reason it's less than potential? Pardon? Opportunity. Any other? Motivation. Very good. Managers. Very good. Qualitative. Okay. Company goals are not your goals. So that's the biggest challenge many organizations are facing it. Go back into DP's wonderful example. He said we hire the best talent available in the market by paying premium salary, isn't it? More than what we give increment to our internal people, we go and hire best people and giving a lot of increase, expecting they are going to bring their potential. What we do in interviews is only potential assessment, isn't it? Can this person come and perform? But the day he joined or she joined, what we started doing is killing the motivation in the form of managers. Our systems and tools are wonderful. It does not capture the real potential and convert into performance. So a lot of things you said, managers, the systems, the tool, the training, and all these things. Is it a real issue? What's the real issue? What you have seen?
I would like to endorse what somebody said about managers.
Yeah.
It is said an individual performs to an extent of 60% to his capability. The remaining 40% is pulled up by managers.
Yep. So all these are, so there is a research conducted by Harvard. It is called performance. Potential is not equal to performance. The reason whatever we cited is the mindset. It is not the structural, it is not managerial, it is the mindset of the employees. So today is one of the biggest challenge many organizations are facing is, we discussed the panel members, many members mentioned, it's a culture. How do you change the mindset and behavior of the people? Forget about the tool, so that the potential is equal to performance. Always we externalize it, but the problem lies within us. So with that, let's have more meaningful questions and debate. So who is going to be the first brave soul? Yeah.
Hi. One of the challenges we face when we go through the appraisal process is the comparison between two employees, maybe belonging to the same team or same role, or maybe different, because they always tend to compare. So how do you address that? Because obviously two individuals are not equal, and you can bring in numbers. For example, we are a US staffing company, and most of our workforce is metrics driven, right? How many submissions, how many hires, etc. So that you can obviously compare, but then there are qualitative aspects to an individual. So how do you address that situation? Because when somebody says, you performed 4 out of 5 versus somebody 3.5 out of 5, and then the guy says, no, I've performed more than this person, how can you rate me that? So how do you address those kind of
So who
situations?
want to take that? Maybe, yeah.
You want to answer?
And you can start.
No. Okay. So, Annie, you are at the corner, so you start here.
All right. So,
You're cornered.
So here's my thought on this one. I guess, and this is probably less of science, but to me, you got to be very clear in terms of how you measure. And I look at different organizations. Again, it gets to the culture of the kind of companies we are. How much about the what and the how. And there's certain companies that have actual cultural metrics. I mean, we have a thing called EPIC 2 values that we actually have pervading what every employee does. Doesn't matter what your level is. But do we really measure them, and how do we measure them, and how consistent we are at them? So I think that part of it is going to be having upfront expectations in terms of the values piece, the how factor, and then what was said earlier in terms of the really objective setting, and how do you have a really robust objective setting exercise, be it quarterly, which is nimble and dynamic. So I think part of it really starts with that conversation. So as much as start saying, oh, we're going to whack ratings, it doesn't mean you have this anarchy which is happening. So to me, the differentiation should be starting really with those really robust goal setting at the beginning on the what factor, and having the dialogue to really change those things as they go by, so the employee kind of knows what's happening, what their goals are, how things are changing, and then having the real-time conversation about the how factor. That, hey, you really got that through, but there are a lot of dead bodies over there. How do you work on that one? So I think that there's a lot of expectation setting, but I think it's also very clear when you're comparing two different people that you have the goals may be different. Let's say if they're based on clients, etc. But the cultural aspect has to be the same. How does an organization define that? And I'll be honest, not many companies have done a great job to say, hey, this is, if you're a salesperson and you're looking at our, for example, EPIC 2 values, this is what it means. So I think that unless we're able to do that as an organization, then it becomes a bit of a beauty contest, right? In terms of, well, that guy speaks better, or he's a team player. Well, what does a team player mean, right? So I think that we really have to spend time as a company defining the how factors, because frankly, that's what really gets dinged a lot of times. The what's are very easy to compare. Hey, look, boss, I did all these things over here. Here's client feedback. Yeah, but you know what? I talked to this guy in the hallway, and Ani thinks you're really an aggressive guy. And you know what? You didn't show up to that particular meeting. So I think if we do it well, the how factor, the cultural piece, we should define that up front and constantly revisit it. Those are my 2 cents.
Let's sort of build on that. So all of us sitting here come from maybe different colleges, different schools, different family backgrounds, right? So we are not same, right? So two individuals will never be same. So therefore, I think we really shouldn't be comparing two individuals. We should look at what the person is supposed to give us in return. The problem is the role clarity is not there. Those of you who are fond of sports, you take up T20, cricket or whatever, any sports. The player, when he goes on, he has a role to perform, and he's told that you need to perform that role to the fullest of your capacity, right? So that's it, and therefore, if he continuously does score well, or if he does certain things, his value anyway, because of the skill that he's exhibiting, goes up into that place, right? So people recognize that dimension, which is there. So if somebody is going up as an opening batsman in a T20, he has to anyway hit. His thing is he doesn't care whether he gets out or not, because he has one mandate, hit on every ball that comes. He has a clarity of a role. So I think coming back to two different individuals, please don't compare. Right?
Actually, what I meant was we don't compare as an organization, but when you have these appraisal discussions, people compare. So how do you deal with that? And I think a lot of it made sense what Annie said, that if your goal expectations or your expectations and how are set properly right in the beginning, I think there'll be less heartburn.
Yeah.
I guess.
So the whole role piece.
DP, I have a little contrary philosophy in this. If you really look at HR, entire HR management system is based on paradox. One set of rules, we say that everybody is equal, you cannot differentiate it. That's one philosophy, isn't it? Contrary philosophy is everybody is different. That's a contrary. So we conveniently use this philosophy to tell this story to employees. So that is true actually. In human psychology, it is true. No two individuals is not equal, because their experience, their upbringing and everything is different. Hence their orientations are different. Still, a lot of people have certain common personalities on common traits. So one of the success of HR policy is how do you differentiate and how do you integrate using that common philosophy. So one thing I find it different between top performer and average performer. Anybody want to take what is the difference you find it, the top performer and average performer? Is it a skill set or is it functional knowledge? So what is big difference? Exactly. The big difference between a top performer and average performer is not functional skills, not technical skills. It's a commodity today's. But the only differentiator is the passion. I have seen the top performer bring tons of passion, which is infectious to the organization. And managers should not kill that passion. And how do you nurture that passion is one of the challenges. So that is the common denominator, which I love. What is the passion difference between or motivation difference? Okay, thank you for taking that question. Yep. Yeah, sure.
Hello, my name is Elson and I work with Tata Hitachi. Slightly contrarian view again. In social science, they say that if the zeitgeist changes, that if the spirit of the times changes, everything else changes. So it's like gravity. So do you think the spirit of the times, as far as the workplace, has changed? Has it become more decentralized? Has it become more democratic, forcing us to relook at everything, including the performance management system? Is it the big influencer? Is it the gravity? Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Now you take it.
Absolutely. And I think when I mentioned the same point, right? When we look back at maybe India, 30 years back, vis-a-vis where we stand today, it's different, right? Most of the companies have various generations working. For example, at SAP, we have 5 generations working together. Their learning ability is different. And Annie also mentioned about the future, right? So yes, things are changing, and that is one of the main reasons that why we have to change, right? Because if change is constant, then continuous development is the only key, isn't it? So of course, and that's one of the reasons why we're changing as well.
Yeah,
Do you want to add? Sorry, go ahead.
I just also want to add on leadership. If you look at the whole concept of leadership, it used to be very, very dictatorial kind of leadership, what was making leadership successful. But now you look at leaders who are able to carry people along with them. You see the number of news articles I read in the paper about flexi timing, dress code changes, which are all signs of